My name is Rachel, 34 years old, and I never thought my own mother would text me those words. I stared at my phone in disbelief. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. My hands trembled as reality sank in. The house I was still paying $5,600 a month for had just become inaccessible to me. What they overlooked would change everything. If you are watching this right now, let me know what you would do in my situation. Would you keep paying that mortgage? Hit subscribe so you can find out what happened next when I finally stood up for myself. Growing up in our middle-class Boston suburb, I had what most would consider an idyllic childhood. My father, Harold, a dedicated high school chemistry teacher, and my mother, Eleanor, who worked as a nurse at the local hospital, created a warm and loving home for me and my younger sister, Jessica. 5 years my junior, Jessica was always the more delicate one, the one I felt compelled to protect and give way to. I remember countless times choosing to let her have the last cookie, the better seat in the car, or the larger bedroom when we moved to a new house when I was 12. Our family traditions were sacred. Sunday dinners were non-negotiable, with Eleanor preparing her famous pot roast while Harold quizzed us on science facts. Every summer, we would spend 2 weeks at Cape Cod, staying in the same rental cottage with its faded blue shutters and creaky screen door. Those memories of building sandcastles with Jessica and collecting seashells at dawn with my father remain some of my most cherished. My parents instilled strong values in us, particularly about honesty and supporting each other. Family comes first, Eleanor would say, setting down plates of homemade mac and cheese. When everyone else lets you down, family will always be there. Harold would nod in agreement, adding his favorite line, Rachel's and Jessica's of the world need to stick together. I believed those words with my whole heart. After high school, I pursued a degree in finance at Boston University. Though only a 30-minute drive from home, I chose to live on campus to experience independence while still being close enough to return for weekend visits. I worked part-time throughout college to minimize student loans and graduated with honors. My parents beamed with pride at my graduation ceremony, with Harold telling everyone at the reception how I was the first in our family to earn a college degree. My first job took me to New York City, working as a financial analyst for a respected investment firm. Despite the distance, I made it a priority to visit home at least once a month. I never missed a birthday, holiday, or important family event. When Jessica decided to attend community college, I happily contributed toward her tuition and textbooks, wanting to ease the financial burden on my parents and give my sister the same opportunities one had worked for. I took pride in being able to buy thoughtful, sometimes expensive gifts for my parents. For their 25th anniversary, I surprised them with a weekend getaway to Vermont. When Harold mentioned wanting a telescope, I researched for weeks to find the perfect model within my budget. For Eleanor, I tracked down a first edition of her favorite novel from childhood. Their delight at these gestures made every dollar spent worthwhile. In the eyes of my family, I was always the responsible one, the achiever, the reliable daughter. These labels felt like badges of honor, and I wore them proudly, never questioning the expectations they carried. The story of our family home began to change in 2008. The economic crisis hit my parents hard. Harold had invested a significant portion of their savings in stocks that plummeted, and Eleanor had to reduce her hours at the hospital due to budget cuts. Suddenly, the mortgage on our family home became a source of constant stress for them. During a Sunday dinner in early 2009, I noticed the tension in my father's shoulders as he silently picked at his food. Eleanor kept changing the subject whenever Jessica asked about their planned kitchen renovation. After Jessica left to meet friends, my parents finally revealed they were 3 months behind on mortgage payments and were considering selling the house. Seeing their distress, I proposed a solution that seemed perfect at the time. I would purchase the house from them, assuming the remaining mortgage, and they could continue living there without the financial burden. With my recent promotion and solid credit history, I qualified for a loan of $672,000 with monthly payments of $5,600. The arrangement seemed ideal. My parents and Jessica would remain in their home, maintaining stability and dignity. I would build equity in property while helping my family. I found a small apartment 10 minutes away, giving everyone appropriate space while staying close. The sacrifice on my part was substantial but worthwhile in my eyes. My monthly mortgage payment consumed nearly 40% of my income, requiring careful budgeting and occasional sacrifices. I turned down an opportunity to work for our firm's London office, knowing the distance would make it difficult to stay connected to my family. Instead, I focused on advancing within the New York office, working longer hours to secure promotions that would ease the financial strain. When Jessica graduated from community college with an associate's degree in business administration, I leveraged my professional connections to help her secure an entry-level position at a local marketing firm. I spent evenings helping her prepare for interviews, bought her first professional wardrobe, and even paid for a professional to update her resume. When Harold developed high blood pressure and needed medication not fully covered by insurance, I quietly added the cost to my monthly budget. When their refrigerator broke down unexpectedly, I arranged for a new one to be delivered the same day. Each time a household repair became necessary, from a leaking roof to a malfunctioning heating system, I handled it promptly, wanting to ensure my family lived comfortably in the home I was now financially responsible for. Throughout these years, I never questioned my role as provider and protector. The pride I felt in being able to support my family overshadowed any potential regrets about the personal and financial constraints I had accepted. When friends questioned why I was paying such a substantial mortgage for a house I didn't live in, I would simply smile and say, "That's what family does for each other." I truly believed that my sacrifices would be recognized and reciprocated if I ever found myself in need. The first subtle shifts in our family dynamic began about 3 years ago. Jessica had moved back home after breaking up with her boyfriend of 2 years. What started as a temporary arrangement, just until I get back on my feet, gradually solidified into permanence. She converted the basement into her own apartment-like space, complete with a mini refrigerator and microwave. Around this time, I began noticing changes in how my family responded to me. Plans we had made would suddenly be canceled last minute. "Oh, we're all just so tired tonight, Rachel. Can we reschedule dinner?" Eleanor would say, only for me to later see social media posts of them enjoying meals together on those same evenings. I wasn't invited to smaller family gatherings anymore, like movie nights or impromptu backyard barbecues. When I would stop by unannounced, conversations would abruptly halt, with awkward glances exchanged between my parents and Jessica. "We're just discussing personal stuff," Jessica would say dismissively, though we'd never had personal stuff that excluded family members before. My mother's phone calls became shorter, more perfunctory. Gone were the lengthy conversations about neighborhood gossip or detailed updates on distant relatives. Now it was just everything's fine and nothing new to report before she found a reason to end the call. The favoritism toward Jessica became increasingly obvious. When she decided to repaint the living room a bold teal color, I only found out after the fact, despite having recently paid for new furniture that no longer matched the walls. "Jessica has such an eye for design," Eleanor gushed when I expressed surprise. The house needed refreshing. My 34th birthday passed with only a text message from my mother and a belated card from my father. 2 months later, Jessica's 29th birthday was celebrated with an elaborate party at our family home, complete with catered food and custom decorations that I glimpsed on my cousin's Instagram story. I hadn't received an invitation. My parents began regularly boasting about Jessica's modest achievements at work, like staying late to finish a project or receiving a compliment from a client. Meanwhile, my promotion to senior financial advisor, which came with significant responsibility managing client portfolios worth millions, received only a perfunctory "that's nice, dear" from Eleanor. The gifts I carefully selected for family occasions were now met with lukewarm responses. The premium coffee machine I bought for my father's birthday was deemed too complicated and relegated to a cabinet. The spa certificate I purchased for my mother was too extravagant and made her uncomfortable. Yet when Jessica presented them with simple store-bought items, They were received with effusive gratitude. I discovered through Facebook that my parents and Jessica had taken a weekend trip to Maine without mentioning it to me. When I casually brought it up, Eleanor shrugged. It was a last-minute thing. We didn't think you'd be interested. Small disagreements began to surface regularly. When I suggested hiring professionals to fix the increasingly problematic plumbing issues, Harold became defensive. We're not made of money, Rachel. We can handle it ourselves. This despite the fact that I had offered to cover the costs entirely. Tensions escalated when Jessica began inviting friends to stay overnight without informing anyone. One Saturday morning, I arrived to drop off some tax documents my father had requested, only to find 3 strangers making breakfast in the kitchen. When I expressed concern about security and liability, given that I was the legal owner of the property, Jessica rolled her eyes. It's not like they're criminals. You're being paranoid. During a particularly stressful week when the property taxes were due, I mentioned the mortgage payment during dinner. Eleanor immediately stiffened. You always bring everything back to money, Rachel. We know you pay the mortgage. You don't have to remind us constantly. The accusation stung, especially since it was the first time I'd mentioned financial matters in months. Harold, who had once been my staunchest defender, stared at his plate and said nothing. His silence hurt more than Eleanor's words. I began to notice my father finding reasons to be elsewhere when I visited. He would suddenly remember errands to run or retreat to his workshop in the garage. The man who had once waited eagerly by the window for my car to pull up now seemed to be avoiding one-on-one conversations with me. The sense of isolation deepened when I discovered, through an accidental group text, that my family had created a separate chat group that excluded me. Family -R was its telling title. The message that had mistakenly included me was about planning a Thanksgiving dinner, an event I had always helped organize. Important family information was no longer shared with me directly. I learned about Harold's minor surgery through a distant cousin. Jessica's promotion at work came to my attention via LinkedIn rather than family conversation. When I confronted my mother about these omissions, she dismissed my concerns. You're so busy with your important job. We didn't want to bother you with every little thing. Invitations to the house, once warm and frequent, became formal and strained. If you're not too busy, we're having dinner at 6 on Sunday, Eleanor would text, the implicit message being that my priorities lay elsewhere. Despite the increasingly uncomfortable atmosphere, I continued to show up, hoping that consistent presence would bridge whatever mysterious gap had formed. I made several attempts to address the growing distance. I organized special family dinners at restaurants everyone enjoyed. I suggested weekend activities that had once brought us joy, like hiking at the state park or visiting the museum during free admission days. Each effort was met with reluctant participation at best, outright refusal at worst. The house that legally belonged to me no longer felt like a place where I belonged. Each visit left me with a hollow feeling in my chest, a sense of standing outside a circle that had once embraced me fully. Still, I continued making those mortgage payments faithfully each month, clinging to the belief that family bonds would ultimately prevail over whatever temporary estrangement we were experiencing. The first major confrontation occurred when Jessica announced her plan to convert the spare bedroom into a home office. I need a dedicated workspace now that I'm taking on freelance projects, she explained over dinner one evening. Mom and Dad already approved using some money from the household fund to buy furniture and equipment. I paused, fork midair. The household fund? You mean the account I set up for home maintenance and utilities? Eleanor cleared her throat. Yes, but it's just a small portion. Jessica needs to advance her career. I understand that, I said carefully. But significant changes to the house should probably involve me in the decision, considering I'm responsible for the mortgage. Jessica rolled her eyes. Here we go again with the mortgage talk. It's not just about the money, I tried to explain. It's about being included in decisions about a property that I legally own. Harold shifted uncomfortably in his chair while Eleanor's expression hardened. Let's discuss this as a family, I suggested, hoping to defuse the tension. The family meeting that followed 2 days later was anything but productive. Jessica arrived with printouts of office furniture she had already ordered. Eleanor sat with arms crossed, her posture defensive before anyone had spoken a word. Harold looked like he wished to be anywhere else. I think we need to clarify expectations about the house, I began. What needs clarifying? Eleanor interrupted. This is our home, not yours. The fact that your name is on some paperwork doesn't change that. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Mom, I never said it wasn't your home. I'm just asking to be included in major decisions, especially ones that involve spending from the account I fund. So now you're monitoring how we spend every penny? Jessica snapped. That's not what I said, I protested, but Eleanor was already building on Jessica's accusation. We don't need your permission to live in our own house, Rachel. Your father and I raised our family here long before you took over the mortgage. Took over the mortgage to help you keep the house, I reminded her, my voice rising despite my best intentions to stay calm. Harold finally spoke, his voice weary. Rachel, can't you just let your sister have this one thing? It's just a room. Dad, this isn't about the room, I tried to explain. It's about feeling like I'm being pushed out of family decisions while still carrying the financial responsibility. Always about money with you. Jessica muttered. The meeting ended with nothing resolved, tensions higher than ever, and me driving home with tears blurring my vision. No one called to check if I had arrived safely. Something my mother had done without fail since I first got my driver's license at 16. Several months later, Jessica dropped another bombshell during Sunday brunch. I'm planning to start a small bakery business from home, she announced brightly. I need to make some modifications to the kitchen to meet commercial standards. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Commercial standards? That would require permits, inspections, possibly rezoning applications. Already looking into all that, Jessica said dismissively. And who would be financially responsible for these modifications? I asked, already suspecting the answer. Well, the house fund, obviously, Jessica replied. It's an investment in my future. I took a deep breath. I think we need to discuss the financial and legal implications. As the property owner, I could be liable if anything goes wrong. And major kitchen renovations would be expensive. Always the wet blanket, Jessica sighed dramatically. Some sister you are. Eleanor set down her fork with unnecessary force. Rachel, your sister is trying to build something for herself. She deserves to use this house to create her future. Deserves the house? I echoed, the phrase sending a chill through me. Yes, Eleanor said firmly. Jessica deserves to benefit from this home just as much as you do. More, even, since she actually lives here and contributes to the daily upkeep. The implication that I contributed nothing beyond money stung deeply. Mom, I handle every major repair, all the property taxes, insurance, and the mortgage that keeps this roof over your heads. And you never let us forget it, do you? Jessica sneered. The argument escalated quickly. Words like selfish, controlling, and ungrateful flew across the dining table. When Eleanor declared, Jessica deserves this house more than you ever did, something inside me broke. I stood up, napkin falling to the floor. I need some air, I managed to say, then walked out the front door with my mother's accusatory stare burning into my back. I drove around aimlessly for hours, tears streaming down my face. My phone remained silent the entire time. No concerned texts asking where I was, no apologetic calls, no acknowledgement of how deeply their words had wounded me. Despite the growing rift, I continued making the $5,600 mortgage payment each month. Each time I authorized the transfer, a voice in my head questioned why I was still supporting people who showed so little regard for my feelings. But another voice, one shaped by years of family-first conditioning, insisted that financial support was my responsibility, regardless of emotional divisions. At work, I maintained a professional facade, never letting colleagues glimpse the personal turmoil I was experiencing. My friend Ashley noticed something was wrong when I declined weekend plans for the third time in a row, preferring to stay home rather than risk questions about my family situation. You seem off lately, she observed over lunch. Everything okay at home? Just busy, I replied with a forced smile, unwilling to voice my suspicions that I was being used for financial security while being emotionally discarded. I made several attempts at reconciliation. I sent thoughtful gifts with notes expressing my desire to clear the air. I suggested family counseling, an idea that was immediately rejected as unnecessary drama. I even apologized for coming across as controlling, though in my heart I knew my requests for inclusion had been reasonable. With each olive branch extended and rebuffed, the sense of being deliberately pushed out of my own family grew stronger. Yet I continued those mortgage payments, clinging to the hope that this phase would pass, that my family would eventually recognize my contributions and welcome me back into the fold. The defining moment came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. I had stopped by the house to drop off some mail that had been mistakenly delivered to my apartment. Using my key to enter quietly, I overheard voices from the kitchen, not realizing anyone was home. Once we get Rachel completely out of the picture, we can talk to a lawyer about transferring the house to your name, Eleanor was saying to Jessica. After all, you're the one who will be taking care of us in our old age. Do you think she'll fight it? Jessica asked. She's so attached to controlling everything through money. Eleanor laughed, a sound that cut through me like glass. What can she do? We're her family. Besides, she's still making the payments like clockwork. We might as well use that to our advantage while we can. She's so easy to manipulate, Jessica added with a chuckle. Just act offended, and she backs down immediately. Remember how she apologized after we excluded her from Thanksgiving planning? I backed away silently, my world crumbling around me. The betrayal was not just in their words, but in the casual, amused tone with which they discussed using me. I left without making my presence known, my hands shaking so badly I could barely drive. After a week of avoiding all contact, I finally gathered the courage to speak with my father alone. I caught him in the driveway as he returned from grocery shopping, asking if we could talk privately. His discomfort was palpable as we sat in my car. Dad, I need to understand what's happening with our family, I began. I feel like Mom and Jessica are deliberately pushing me away while still expecting me to cover the mortgage and repairs. Harold fidgeted with his wedding ring, eyes downcast. Rachel, you know your mother has always been the one who manages family matters. This isn't about managing family matters, Dad. This is about treating me like an ATM while excluding me from the family. He sighed heavily. Your sister is going through a tough time finding her path. Your mother just wants to support her. And what about supporting me? I asked, voice breaking. Does anyone in this family care about how I'm feeling? My father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stayed up all night helping with science projects, who had once been my greatest advocate, merely shrugged. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family harmony. In that moment, I realized the father I had adored had chosen the path of least resistance over standing up for fairness. He would not be my ally in this situation. Despite this devastating realization, I continued making those mortgage payments, now more out of habit and lingering hope than any belief that things would improve. The message arrived on a sunny Thursday morning in April. I was sitting at my desk reviewing client portfolios when my phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. I expected the usual brief update or perhaps a question about an upcoming bill. Instead, the words that appeared on my screen changed everything. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you after finding out you were snooping around the house when we weren't home. Please respect our privacy going forward. I stared at the message, reading and rereading it as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on my desk. The accusation of snooping was clearly referring to the day I had overheard their conversation, though I had never revealed my presence. My first instinct was to call and clear up the misunderstanding, to explain that I had simply been dropping off mail. I dialed Eleanor's number, then my father's, then even Jessica's. All went straight to voicemail. I sent follow-up texts asking for clarification. No responses came. The silence was deafening and deliberate. They had made a unified decision to cut me off physically from the house I legally owned and financially supported, without even the courtesy of a conversation. As the initial shock wore off, a profound sense of betrayal settled in my chest like a weight. The home where I had grown up, the property I had sacrificed to maintain for my family, was now being treated as a fortress against me. The people I had supported without question now viewed me as an intruder. I canceled my afternoon meetings and drove home to my apartment, unable to focus on work. Sitting on my sofa, I began to review mentally all that had transpired over the past 2 years. The gradual exclusion from family events. The dismissal of my concerns about house decisions. The growing favoritism toward Jessica. The overheard conversation about getting me completely out of the picture while continuing to benefit from my financial support. The pieces clicked together with painful clarity. I hadn't been imagining the distance, it had been deliberately created. I hadn't been oversensitive about being excluded. I had been systematically pushed out. And now, with the changing of the locks, the physical barrier only confirmed what had been emotionally true for some time. I was no longer considered part of the family except as a source of money. Anger replaced hurt as I thought about the monthly mortgage payments that had strained my budget for years. $5,600 every month, without fail, even as I was being treated with increasing coldness and disrespect. Money that could have gone toward my own home, my retirement savings, or experiences I had denied myself for the sake of family security. The injustice of it all finally penetrated the fog of family obligation that had clouded my judgment. Why was I continuing to sacrifice financially for people who not only didn't appreciate it, but were actively working against me? I drafted several responses to Eleanor's text, ranging from lengthy explanations to angry accusations. I deleted them all. After hours of consideration, I sent only, understood. Very smart. But I think you overlooked one thing. Then I opened my banking app and navigated to the automatic payments section. My finger hovered over the mortgage payment scheduled for the following week. With a deep breath and a surprising sense of liberation, I selected Cancel All Future Payments. A confirmation prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? For a brief moment, years of conditioning about family responsibility made me hesitate. Then I remembered Eleanor's words. Jessica deserves this house more than you ever did. I tapped confirm. The simple action of canceling that payment felt like setting down a heavy burden I had carried for years. My shoulders physically relaxed as I leaned back on my sofa, experiencing my first moment of genuine peace in months. Within 2 days, the reactions began. First came angry texts from Eleanor. The bank called about the mortgage payment. What do you think you're doing? My phone lit up with missed calls from numbers I recognized. My parents' home, Jessica's cell, even my father's work phone. I let them all go to voicemail. Not yet ready to engage in what would inevitably be an emotional confrontation. Jessica's message was the most aggressive. You can't just stop paying the mortgage. That's illegal. We'll sue you for abandonment or whatever. Her legal threats, though baseless, indicated the panic my simple action had caused. As the legal owner of the property with my name on the mortgage, I had every right to stop payments, though it would eventually affect my credit score. Harold's voicemail was different in tone, tinged with worry rather than anger. Rachel, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your mother was just upset about something else when she sent that text. Can we talk about this? Please call me back. The sudden shift from exclusion to urgent attempts at contact was telling. It wasn't my presence they missed, but my financial support. I maintained my silence, using the time to research my legal position and options. As the sole borrower on the mortgage, I was under no legal obligation to continue payments for a property I didn't occupy, especially when I had been denied access to it. The consequences would fall primarily on me in terms of credit impact, but the property would eventually face foreclosure if payments weren't resumed. Exactly 1 week after canceling the mortgage payment, I received an email from a lawyer representing my parents. Ms. Mitchell, I represent Harold and Eleanor Mitchell regarding the property at 142 Maple Street. We have a problem that requires immediate attention. Please call my office at your earliest convenience to discuss resolution options. Regards, Benjamin Harris, ESQ. The formal tone and implicit urgency confirmed what I had suspected. Without my financial support, my family was facing a crisis they couldn't resolve on their own. The house that Jessica deserved more than I did was now at risk because the person who had been shouldering its financial burden had finally stepped away. I read the email several times, considering my response. Part of me, the people pleaser who had always put family needs first, felt the pull to call immediately and fix everything. But another part, the one that had finally recognized the pattern of exploitation, held firm. I closed the email without replying and blocked the law firm's number on my phone. The time for immediate reactions and emotional decisions was over. Whatever happened next would be approached with careful consideration and professional advice, not guilt-driven impulses. The day after receiving the lawyer's email, I scheduled a consultation with Amanda Wilson, a family law attorney recommended by a colleague. In her sleek downtown office, I laid out the entire situation, from my initial purchase of the family home to the recent lockout and ceased payments. Legally, your position is straightforward, Amanda explained after reviewing the mortgage documents. As the sole owner and borrower, you have no obligation to provide housing for family members, especially ones who have explicitly denied you access to your own property. What about the foreclosure process? I asked, concerned about potential complications. Typically, it takes several months before the bank initiates foreclosure. During that time, your credit will be impacted, but you'll have options. You could sell the property, transfer ownership while refinancing the mortgage in someone else's name, or resume payments if circumstances change. I also met with financial advisor Gregory Thompson to understand the broader implications for my financial future. The credit score hit will be significant, he warned, but not insurmountable. Given your otherwise excellent financial history, you could recover within 2 to 3 years. We discussed strategies to mitigate the damage, including possibly selling the property before foreclosure proceedings began, which would protect my credit to some extent. Gregory helped me calculate that despite the potential credit impact, freeing myself from the $5,600 monthly payment would actually improve my overall financial position within 1 year. Armed with professional advice, I began preparing documentation of every contribution I had made to the property. Bank statements showing mortgage payments, receipts for repairs and improvements, property tax records, and insurance payments. The total was staggering even to me, over $300,000 in just the past 4 years. While the financial consequences were significant, I also had to face the emotional fallout of my decision. My credit score would suffer, but the greater pain came from accepting that my relationship with my family had fundamentally changed, perhaps irreparably. I confided in my friend Ashley over coffee, finally sharing the full story I had kept hidden for months. I feel guilty for walking away, I admitted. But I also feel like I had no choice. Ashley reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Rachel, they changed the locks on you. On a house you pay for. There's no guilt to be had here. Her simple validation brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had internalized the belief that family obligation trumped all else, including fair treatment and respect. Hearing someone else affirm that I wasn't wrong to expect basic consideration was surprisingly powerful. To my surprise, other friends and colleagues were similarly supportive when I gradually shared aspects of my situation. My team leader at work offered flexible hours if I needed time for legal consultations. My neighbor offered to collect my mail during an upcoming business trip, saying, "You've got enough on your plate without worrying about small stuff." These small kindnesses from people who weren't obligated by blood ties to care about me provided a stark contrast to my family's treatment. With the immediate financial and legal considerations addressed, I turned my attention to rebuilding my life independent of the family dynamics that had consumed so much of my energy. The first step was finding a new place to live, somewhere without daily reminders of the situation. I found a bright one-bedroom apartment in a different neighborhood, further from my family home but closer to my office. The moving process was cathartic, allowing me to sort through possessions and keep only what truly mattered to me. My new space reflected my tastes alone, without the compromises I had always made to accommodate family preferences. Practical matters came next. I changed my phone number, keeping the old one active but muted, its notifications no longer disrupting my peace. I created a new email address for personal communications, setting up filters on my old account to automatically file messages from family members into a folder I could check when emotionally prepared. Work became a welcome focus during this transition. I threw myself into a major client portfolio review project, earning recognition from senior management. The distraction was therapeutic, and the professional success a reminder that one area of my life was flourishing despite the personal turmoil. Community involvement offered another path to rebuilding. I began volunteering at a local literacy center on Saturday mornings, finding unexpected joy in helping adults improve their reading skills. The simple act of contributing positively to strangers' lives helped counterbalance the negativity from my family situation. New friendships developed naturally through these activities. Samantha, another volunteer at the literacy center, became a weekend hiking companion. Michael from work introduced me to his book club, where I met people who shared my love of historical fiction. My new neighbors, an older couple named Robert and Linda, often invited me for Sunday brunches on their balcony. None of these new connections knew the details of my family drama, allowing me to present myself without the weight of that history. It was refreshing to be known for my current interests and character rather than as an extension of family expectations and dynamics. About 3 weeks after the initial lawyer's email, a second communication arrived, this one noticeably different in tone. Dear Ms. Mitchell, our firm continues to represent your parents regarding the property matter. We would like to discuss potential resolutions that could benefit all parties. We understand there may be personal considerations beyond the financial aspects, and we're open to creative solutions. Please contact us at your convenience to explore options. Sincerely, Benjamin Harris, ESQ. The shift from "we have a problem" to creative solutions suggested my family was beginning to realize the seriousness of the situation. I forwarded the email to my attorney but still made no direct response. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard rumors about my family's financial difficulties. Apparently, Jessica had quit her job to focus on her bakery business, which had yet to generate significant income. My parents, both now retired, had fixed incomes insufficient to cover the mortgage. The comfortable lifestyle they had maintained, largely due to my financial support, was rapidly becoming unsustainable. Indirect contact attempts increased. A college friend mentioned that Eleanor had called asking for my new address. My former neighbor reported that Jessica had come by looking for me. Even my company's reception desk informed me that someone matching my father's description had inquired about my work schedule, though they had followed protocol and revealed nothing. The most direct attempt came when Jessica showed up at my office building one afternoon. I was alerted by security before she could reach my floor. Through the lobby camera feed, I watched her argue with the receptionist, insisting it was a family emergency. I instructed security to deny access, but took no pleasure in the scene. Despite everything, seeing my sister reduced to desperate measures brought mixed emotions. A handwritten letter from Eleanor arrived via my old neighbor about a month after I had moved. Unlike her usual commanding tone, this letter carried a hint of concession. Rachel, we may have overreacted with the locks. You've always been welcome in our home. There have been misunderstandings on both sides, but surely we can work this out as a family. Your father misses you terribly. Please call us. Mom. The careful wording struck me immediately. Our home, not your house. Misunderstandings on both sides, distributing blame equally despite the clearly one-sided actions. No actual apology for the false accusations or exclusionary behavior. And the emotional leverage of my father's feelings, designed to trigger my protective instincts. In the past, such a letter would have sent me rushing to make amends, taking on more than my share of responsibility to restore family harmony. Now, with distance and perspective, I could recognize the subtle manipulation. My family wanted access to my financial support restored, but there was no acknowledgement of the deeper issues that had led to our estrangement. I placed the letter in a folder with the lawyer's emails, documentation of a chapter in my life that was painful but instructive. For the first time, I felt no compulsion to respond immediately. No weight of obligation crushing my resolve to maintain boundaries. Instead, I focused on strengthening my new life foundations. I established clear communication guidelines with my attorney. All contact from my family or their representatives would go through her first. I continued therapy sessions, working through the complex grief of family estrangement. I built new traditions and connections that honored my values and respected my worth. The house that had once symbolized my commitment to family security now represented a valuable lesson about the difference between generous support and self-destructive sacrifice. Whatever happened with the property moving forward would be decided on my terms, with my interests given the priority they deserved. As weeks passed without my response to either the lawyer's emails or my mother's letter, the pressure from external sources intensified. Extended family members began calling mutual friends to express concern about the family rift. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, left a voicemail heavy with disapproval. "I can't believe you'd abandon your family over a simple misunderstanding. They gave you everything, and this is how you repay them?" Her message revealed how thoroughly my parents had controlled the narrative, casting themselves as victims of my unreasonable behavior rather than acknowledging their role in our estrangement. I drafted several responses explaining my side, but ultimately deleted them all. Those who had already formed judgments without hearing my perspective were unlikely to be swayed by explanations. More surprising were the reactions from childhood friends who sided with my family without question. Melissa, who had been my best friend throughout high school, sent a text that stung deeply. "Your parents are devastated. I know you're successful now, but don't forget where you came from. Family should come first." The irony that I had prioritized family above all else for years, to my own detriment, apparently escaped her. At work, colleagues noticed my subdued mood despite my efforts to maintain professionalism. When asked about personal matters, I developed a brief explanation that avoided details. "I'm working through some family changes. Nothing that affects my work, but I appreciate your concern." Most people respected the boundary this created, though a few pressed for more information out of genuine concern. Social events became minefields of potential questioning. At industry gatherings where local professionals often knew each other's families, I would inevitably be asked, "How are your parents? Still in that beautiful house on Maple Street?" The first few times caught me off guard, leaving me stammering through awkward responses. Eventually, I crafted a neutral reply, "We're not in close contact currently, but I'm sure they're doing well." The judgment in some people's expressions when I admitted to family estrangement was palpable. In our society, family relationships are presumed sacred, and those who step back from toxic family dynamics often face scrutiny and criticism. Each questioning glance seemed to ask, what kind of person abandons their family? Rather than becoming defensive, I worked with my therapist to develop confidence in my decisions without feeling compelled to justify them to others. "You don't owe everyone your story, Dr. Winters reminded me. And you certainly don't need universal approval for making healthy choices." This perspective helped me hold firm when confronted directly about my choices. When a family friend cornered me at a coffee shop demanding to know, "How could you do this to your parents after everything they've done for you?" I was able to respond calmly. "I understand you care about them, but this is a private matter based on circumstances you're not fully aware of. I've made the best decision I can with the information I have." Learning to stand in my truth without becoming defensive or apologetic was perhaps the most challenging and rewarding growth during this period. Each time I maintained boundaries without falling into the trap of overjustification, my confidence in my decisions strengthened. The journey toward inner peace required active effort. Following my therapist's recommendation, I began a daily meditation practice, starting with just 5 minutes each morning. Initially, my mind raced with family voices and unresolved arguments. But gradually I learned to observe these thoughts without being consumed by them. Literature became another source of healing. I discovered books about family dynamics, emotional manipulation, and establishing healthy boundaries. Titles like Toxic Parents and Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents helped me understand that my experience, while painful, was not unique. The validation in recognizing my family patterns described in psychological terms was profoundly comforting. Through therapy and reading, I began to forgive myself for what I had previously seen as failures, not recognizing the manipulation earlier, allowing myself to be used financially, not standing up for my needs sooner. I came to understand that these weren't weaknesses, but consequences of lifelong conditioning to prioritize family harmony above personal well-being. The process of healing wasn't linear. Some days brought clarity and strength, others pulled me back into doubt and guilt. On particularly difficult days, I would reread the text message about changing locks, reminding myself that I hadn't walked away from a healthy relationship, but had been literally locked out of a house I was paying for. My support network proved invaluable during these fluctuations. Samantha, who I'd met at the literacy center, shared her own experience with family estrangement after revealing she hadn't spoken to her father in nearly a decade. The first year is the hardest, she told me over coffee. You question yourself constantly, but eventually you realize that peace is worth more than approval. The book club became another unexpected source of support. During a discussion of a novel featuring family betrayal, I hesitantly shared a small piece of my own experience. The group's compassionate response, free of judgment or unwanted advice, created a space where I felt truly heard. My neighbors, Robert and Linda, offered a different kind of comfort. In their 70s, they had navigated complex family relationships for decades and provided perspective when I worried about the long-term consequences of my decisions. Relationships can heal with time and changes on both sides, Linda advised, but only if everyone involved is willing to acknowledge hard truths. Professionally, this period brought unexpected growth. Without the constant drain of family drama and financial strain, I found myself more focused and creative at work. A major client presentation that I might once have approached with divided attention now received my full creative energy, resulting in new business for the firm and personal recognition. My financial situation improved dramatically once I was no longer sending $5,600 monthly to a mortgage on a house I couldn't enter. For the first time in years, I began building substantial savings. I consulted with a financial planner about recovering from the credit impact of the foreclosure and developed a 3-year plan to rebuild my financial foundation. The physical benefits of reduced stress manifested in improved sleep, fewer tension headaches, and renewed energy for activities I had once enjoyed but gradually abandoned as family obligations consumed my resources. I joined a weekend hiking group, rediscovered my love for photography, and started taking Spanish classes at a community center. As the 6-month mark approached since receiving the text about changed locks, I checked my credit report to assess the damage from the missed mortgage payments. As expected, my score had dropped significantly. But my financial advisor assured me that with consistent positive credit behavior, I could rebuild within the projected time frame. What I hadn't anticipated was the emotional freedom that came with accepting this consequence. The credit score that had once seemed so critical now represented a price I was willing to pay for reclaiming my autonomy. The number on the report didn't define my worth or success. It was simply a temporary situation resulting from a necessary choice. Around this time, I received an unexpected email from my father's personal account rather than through the lawyer. Rachel, the bank has initiated foreclosure proceedings. Your mother doesn't know I'm contacting you. Is there any way we could talk, just the two of us? I know things have gone too far, but there must be some solution. Dad. His direct acknowledgement that things have gone too far was the closest thing to accountability I had received from any family member. For a moment, I considered responding, wondering if perhaps my father, separated from my mother's influence, might be ready for an honest conversation. After careful consideration and consultation with my therapist, I composed a brief, clear response. Dad, I'm open to a conversation with the assistance of a family mediator if you're genuinely interested in addressing the underlying issues, not just the financial situation. Please let me know if this is acceptable to you. Rachel. His reply came quickly. Your mother won't agree to a mediator. Can't we just talk privately? The response confirmed what I had suspected. Nothing had fundamentally changed. My father was reaching out due to financial pressure, not because the family had recognized their treatment of me was wrong. He was still unwilling or unable to engage without deferring to my mother's preferences, even when those preferences perpetuated harmful dynamics. I didn't respond further, though it pained me to maintain distance from my father, who I believed was more a participant than an architect of the family dysfunction. I recognized that selective engagement would likely draw me back into the same patterns without meaningful change. Instead, I continued building my new life, one choice at a time. The woman who had once defined herself primarily through family roles and responsibilities was emerging as someone defined by her own values, boundaries, and authentic connections. 2 years after that life-altering text message about changed locks, I stood in the sunlit living room of my new condominium, surrounded by friends celebrating my housewarming. The space, with its open floor plan and walls painted in calming blues and greens, reflected not just my aesthetic preferences, but my journey toward creating a home that was truly mine in every sense. The path to this moment hadn't been easy. The foreclosure on the family house had proceeded as expected, completing about 10 months after I stopped payments. My credit had taken the anticipated hit, but with careful financial management and time, it had begun to recover. More importantly, the monthly freedom from that $5,600 payment had allowed me to save for a down payment on this property, something that would have taken years longer otherwise. My career had flourished in ways I couldn't have imagined when family drama consumed so much of my mental energy. The promotion to senior portfolio manager had come with significant salary increases and recognition within the industry. I had begun a part-time MBA program, attending evening classes twice weekly, investing in my professional future rather than pouring resources into a one-sided family relationship. Perhaps most significant was my relationship with Daniel, a kind and thoughtful architect I had met through my book club. Unlike previous relationships where I had unconsciously replicated familiar patterns of overgiving and underreceiving, this connection was built on mutual respect and balanced reciprocity. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be valued for myself, not for what I could provide. Through various channels, I had learned about the aftermath of the foreclosure for my family. They had been forced to relocate to a small apartment on the other side of town. Jessica had abandoned her bakery plans and taken a retail job. My parents, facing the financial reality of retirement without my support, had scaled back significantly. The house that had been the center of so much conflict had been sold at auction, passing to new owners who knew nothing of its complicated history. The revelation came during an unexpected encounter at Wilson's Grocery 6 months earlier. Reaching for a carton of eggs, I had turned to find myself face to face with my father. We both froze, the fluorescent lights humming overhead as shoppers moved around us, oblivious to the charged moment. "Rachel," he had said finally, his voice a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "Dad," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. An awkward silence followed before he gestured vaguely toward his shopping cart. "Just picking up a few things for dinner." I nodded, noticing the store brand items and limited quantities, so different from the abundant shopping trips of the past. "How are you?" I asked, genuine despite everything. "Managing," he said with a sigh. "We found an apartment near Riverside Park. 2 bedrooms. Your mother is adjusting." The unspoken acknowledgement of their reduced circumstances hung between us. "And Jessica?" I couldn't help asking. "Married last spring. Lives in Cincinnati now with her husband. Insurance salesman." He shifted uncomfortably. "She doesn't call much." The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica, who had been positioned to deserve the house and take care of our parents, had moved away once the financial benefits disappeared. "You look well," my father offered, studying my face. "Happy." "I am," I realized as I said it. "I really am." He nodded, a complex emotion crossing his features. "Your mother still believes you should have handled things differently." "Of course she did. Some things never changed." "And you, Dad? What do you believe?" He looked down at his cart, then back at me. "I believe we all made mistakes," he said finally. "Some bigger than others." It wasn't an apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever expected. We parted with an awkward goodbye, no promises to keep in touch. No pretense that one grocery store encounter could bridge the chasm of broken trust. That brief interaction had confirmed what my therapeutic journey had already taught me. I couldn't control how others perceived our shared history, only how I responded to it. My mother might always cast me as the villain in her narrative, but that didn't make it true. My father might recognize the injustice, but lack the courage to fully acknowledge it. Jessica might never understand the depth of her participation in the family dysfunction. None of that diminished the validity of my experience or the necessity of my choices. The personal growth I had achieved since walking away from that toxic situation was evident in every aspect of my life. I had developed an ability to recognize when relationships were becoming unbalanced and address issues early rather than accommodating until resentment built. I understood the difference between genuine generosity and sacrifices made from fear of rejection or obligation. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth wasn't tied to my usefulness to others. The voice that had once whispered I was selfish for having boundaries had been replaced by one that recognized self-respect as a prerequisite for healthy relationships of any kind. Therapy had helped me understand that while family connections are important, not all family dynamics are healthy. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do, both for ourselves and ultimately for others, is to step back from patterns that enable dysfunction. This wasn't abandonment, but a refusal to continue participating in a harmful system. The journey from people-pleaser to someone with healthy boundaries hadn't been linear. There were still moments when guilt surfaced, when I questioned whether I could have tried harder or tolerated more. But these moments grew less frequent and less intense with time, overshadowed by the peace and authenticity that now characterized my daily life. Looking around at the friends gathered in my new home, I realized I had created something my family of origin had never provided, a space where I was accepted completely, where love wasn't contingent on utility, where disagreement didn't threaten connection. The family we choose can sometimes be more nurturing than the one we're born into, a truth I had discovered through painful but necessary separation. Would there ever be reconciliation with my parents and sister? I couldn't predict the future. True healing would require acknowledgement and change from all parties, not just a financial necessity or surface pleasantries. I remained open to that possibility while no longer placing my life on hold waiting for it. The most profound lesson from this chapter of my life was learning to trust my own perceptions. For years, I had allowed others to define my reality, to tell me what I should feel, what I should accept, what constituted appropriate family behavior. Breaking free from that external definition had been both terrifying and liberating. Now I understood that healthy love never requires erasing yourself. Genuine connection doesn't demand that one person consistently sacrifice while others consistently benefit. Family loyalty shouldn't mean tolerating mistreatment or exploitation. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned that sometimes walking away isn't failure, but the first step toward authentic living. The courage to say no more, when faced with ongoing injustice, can be the beginning of a journey towards self-respect and genuine peace. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligation and self-preservation? What helped you find peace with your decision? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if this story resonated with you. If you know someone struggling with family boundaries, please share this video with them. Remember, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is walk away from situations that diminish us. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship.